everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. In today's video I'm going to be comparing Bad Luck and Trouble by Lee Child to Reacher Season 2. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books, and today I thought I would look at one particular one of those books versus some TV that has been very popular recently. So I'm going to be reviewing and comparing the 11th book in the Jack Reacher series by Lee Child, Bad Luck and Trouble, and the second season of the Amazon Prime TV series Reacher, which came out during December and January and was based on this 2007 book. Bad Luck and Trouble is a bit different from other Jack Reacher books in that it introduces us to Jack Reacher's Special Investigators Unit in the army from his military days. The reason that the Special Investigators have come back into Jack's life is because one of them has been found dead, and Reacher gets a communication from his ex-sergeant Francis Neely asking him for his help in getting to the bottom of what has happened to members of their elite unit. That's the source material that was being adapted. The TV show, season 1 of Reacher, became Amazon's most watched series shortly after its release, and despite the reviews for this second outing being somewhat less favourable, season 2 was still watched by a huge fan base, and it became Prime Video's most watched title of 2023 pretty much days after the release of the first 3 episodes in December. Today I'm going to look at some of the major changes and minor changes that have been made between source material and screen, and I'm going to be reviewing both the book, which I recently reread, and the series. As with the first series, Reacher Season 2 does remain, in a broad sense, faithful to the book that it has come from. And I watched it before rereading the book, which meant that several years had elapsed between me reading the book and watching the programme. And I think if you do it that way, then you notice the differences less. But I then went back and reread the source material. It didn't match up quite as similarly as I thought it had. It's kind of faithful. I think it will somewhat satisfy Reacher fans, but it also makes a lot of changes to what we find in this book. So the biggest change for the series is the backstory element of the TV series. I think this book was chosen as the second one to be adapted in order to showcase Reacher's military police background. In the book, Reacher sort of just thinks about his past and his military colleagues in the Special Investigators as he and the remains of the group investigate, whereas on screen this was turned into full flashbacks, with that almost becoming like a past timeline running alongside the present timeline of Reacher investigating. They even fleshed out this army background by showing an actual case that the Special Investigators were involved in this past timeline, and as far as I can remember we haven't seen that particular case in any of the books, so I think that this was created for the screen. Certainly it was not contained in this book. So all of this background and flashbacks was entirely new to the TV show. I did like this backstory element enough on screen, although I did think that they'd made the "you do not mess with the Special Investigators" slogan much more gimmicky on screen. I don't know why exactly, but it felt to me a bit forced, whereas in the book it actually did seem quite threatening and very deadly serious. There are also big changes from the book to the villains and side characters, and this is a spoiler-free review and comparison, but Russo in the TV series is not either of the police characters from the book, and his storyline was also entirely new. He was given quite a bit to do and appeared in several episodes getting really his own plot. We didn't really have that in the book at all, and he didn't exist. The changes that I understood the least about Reacher Season 2 was the moving of the setting. In the book, Reacher meets up with Neely in LA. In the show, we see Reacher and Neely meet in New York. In the book, the team goes to Las Vegas, which was a section I was really looking forward to seeing adapted to investigate further, and they don't do this until about halfway through the book. But in the series, the team go to Atlantic City instead, and this happens in only the second episode. So both the timeline and the setting have been very much changed. Without going into any spoilers, there is a key plot detail change between the book and the series about one character in particular, which has been used in the series to add tension and an element of doubt and suspense. My husband quite liked this detail. I, especially when I was reading the book afterwards, did not like this detail and couldn't really see the point of it. But yeah, I suppose it did add suspense. One of the things I did like about the TV series is that there are some unexpected nods to other Reacher books here. And these did give a hint as to the nature of the timeline that they're going for with the TV series. So Reacher's exploits in the town of Margrave that happened in season 1 and that happened in the first book in the series, Killing Floor, are mentioned as being some time ago. They've kind of changed Reacher's appearance. They've made him look older and more muscular, and it's supposed to be taking place 2 years and 7 months after he left Margrave at the end of season 1. I understand that the reason that they are doing this is because although they're not adapting the books in order, the timeline of the books is still the timeline, if that makes sense. We also get a reference to James Barr in this series, which I thought was interesting. He's a key character in the book One Shot. And if you have followed Jack Reacher or you've watched the Jack Reacher film that starred Tom Cruise, One Shot was the source material for that film. And James Barr is mentioned as somebody who Reacher says he has seen sort of recently or given help to, and that was book 9 in the series. So obviously the events of One Shot have taken place in Reacher's life timeline, but we haven't seen them on screen yet. From this, I'm surmising that the timeline of the books is the timeline Reacher lives in the TV series, despite them being adapted in a different order. There is also a guest appearance from a character from season 1, and another character from season 1 is mentioned a couple of times, but I frankly thought the insertion of the character from season 1 was done in a bit of a ridiculous way, but that's possibly just me. I guess that this was done to sort of tie the two series together a bit. My thoughts on Reacher season 2. I have mixed feelings. In summary, while I understand some of the changes, I didn't love the small changes to the villains, and particularly I didn't love the changes to the climax, which I just think is so good in the book, so memorable. It was like the one real detail that I had a very clear memory of from the first time I read the book. And I just think that unfortunately this season was not quite as well adapted as season 1. It relies quite heavily on set pieces and action scenes and events, and while that is understandable, I think that events from the books are often shuffled around to ensure that each episode has action. And I feel like the choice of source material for this adaptation served to make Jack Reacher a bit less of a loner and to show him with colleagues and friends. I feel like they're trying to make Jack Reacher a more relatable character. But for me, quite a lot of the fun of Jack Reacher's character as we meet him in the books and as we go along through the books, although they can all be read as individual standalones, if you do read them in the order that they were published, you do get a sense of Jack Reacher developing as a character. And I think some of the fun of his character is that he is such a loner and that we slowly come to know details of his past from the books. I think that there's just more of an element of mystery to him, and by giving him the chance to have so many people to care about so early on screen, despite drawing attention at times to his outsider from the group status, I just feel like some of his mystique and intrigue is lost in translation. And for me, his character on the screen is both somewhat too much of a genius in the way he kind of jumps to conclusions about where the evidence is leading, and he's also been made into a bit too much of a man who just goes around smashing things up. Even though he is a man who smashes people up in the books, I still don't think that the TV series has quite nailed the subtleties of his personality. There's something about Reacher in the books that I just love so much more than I like Reacher's character on screen. The series overall, I feel like it lost its way a bit. I feel like it relied a bit too heavily on action, and because of moving around the events in the book, it just didn't really keep the sense of the mystery unfolding that there was in the book. In reviews, this series has been criticised as being a bit of a mess, and I do agree that I was actually bored in places over the course of the 8 episodes, and I was just unimpressed in other places. I do really like the characters in this series, and I thought they were well played. I really, really want this TV series to be really good, because I feel like there's a high chance of getting more of the books made the better it is. And I really, really want to see more of the Jack Reacher books adapted. I am a big fan. I think the makers of this series are close to getting it right, but they're leaning too heavily into mindless entertainment in places, and there's nothing wrong with mindless entertainment. I absolutely enjoyed some of the action in this, some of the bits where you can just switch off and enjoy Jack Reacher's world. But I just feel like they made some unnecessary changes, and if they keep doing this, this could lead to starting to get it more wrong than right, and I don't want that to happen. That would be a real shame if we didn't get many more series of this to come. I'd love to hear from you in the comments your opinion, especially if you've read the book and watched the TV series, or even if you've just watched the TV series, because to me, 8 episodes seems to require a little bit too much padding. Both of the 2 series so far have had 8 episodes, and I think they have slightly suffered from it in the middle. It just seems to lose its way a little bit. The parts that are really faithfully adapted from this book are pretty much the first 100 pages or so of the book, and they're pretty much all in episode 1, which just shows you how much material can be adapted into 1 episode of TV. I also think it's no coincidence that episode 1, which is the most faithful to the book, was the episode I probably enjoyed the most, and that I thought worked really nicely, because I really enjoyed the opening of the book. The first 114 pages, I think it is Jack Reacher and Neely working together. I really enjoy that combination, and I really enjoyed like the double act in the early part of this book, and I think that was maybe rushed through a little bit for the TV series. Despite any flaws that I may have mentioned, Reacher is still highly watchable, and if you've not tried the book and you were in any way disappointed by the TV series, I do think that the book makes much more sense than the later episodes of the series, and it's well worth a read in my opinion. Very punchy and quick to read as always, and I think that if you enjoyed the series, you would really enjoy this book, perhaps even more. My verdict is that I enjoyed Bad Luck and Trouble more than Reacher Season 2, but I do want to see the TV series continue. I was both interested and excited to see that Season 3 of Reacher has already been announced, and it will apparently adapt the 7th Jack Reacher book, Persuader, from 2003. I really enjoyed the book Persuader, and I think that in some ways it's a shame that Season 2 did so many army flashbacks, because when I first read Persuader, it was the first time in this sequence of books that Reacher was having flashbacks to his army days and to a particular case that had really affected him, and it was such a good read. It's really, really brutal, but I really look forward to seeing it adapted and to getting to reread it. Fingers crossed that it stays quite faithful to the book, and that from what we've had from Season 2, we get a really strong sense of Reacher as a person prior to his life as a drifter. We'll have to see how that goes. So do let me know in the comments, what did you think about this TV series if you've watched it? Are you a fan of the books of Jack Reacher? Are you a fan of the TV series Reacher? Are you a fan of both? I'd love to hear from you, all your different perspectives on what you thought about these two. For more Jack Reacher content, I do have a few videos now on my channel. If you've recently watched Reacher season 1 as well, or rewatched it, you could check out my comparison, books versus TV, of Killing Floor versus Reacher season 1. And if you would like to get into the books but don't know where to start, do check out my reader's guide to Jack Reacher for a full overview of the books. If you have enjoyed this video comparison today, please do give it a like. Please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks very much for watching, and I do hope you will join me again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.